Well, hello again. So it's the big one today. It's another day close to Hyrox, and Hyrox is essentially, at its core, for over 50% of the time, a running race. Now, I think if I go back far enough, when Hyrox was first mentioned to me, and it must be about a year ago now, that it was, I'd never even heard of it, never seen anything about it. You know, it was just an unknown to me. And it was described to me, it had these kind of 8 1K runs and then the kind of various stations. And it sounded interesting, it sounded unusual. And at that stage I was, getting into the kind of the fitness journey. It's like, yeah, and it was being talked as, next year. So it was being talked a little way off. It's like, yeah, no, that sounds good. It was I didn't fully get into it, grasp it, or anything like that. It just sounded like something quite cool. So let's kind of do it. Obviously, as then time went on, when we booked the first tickets and then the training started and everything else, it became very apparent when I started looking things up that, okay, running isn't just, there's 8 stations of non-running and 8 stations of running. Running is one of the key components. And I remember doing some very, very early kind of, not full kind of simulations, but doing some running into some of the stations. And it was like, okay, yeah, the stations, yeah, they're all relatively straightforward. They're movements that I've done, the movements that I've done in training, but that running luck. And so I realized that, okay, I'm going to have to brush up on the run. And it wasn't really brush up, I'm going to have to learn how to run. Fortunately, at the same time, part of the group were training for the local 10K race. So they started doing a Sunday morning run club, which I grudgingly went along to and just started running. Going through a bit of a program. It was about an hour and a quarter every Sunday, doing some sprints and shuttle runs and some long distance and things like that, and just kind of building up and running with others. And I had pain. I think it's my hip flexors, basically down the outside of my thighs, my knees, basically my body was going, what are we doing? We've got to 48 and we haven't done this much running. Why are we running now? And it was a bit of a shock to the system. And I knew, I wasn't damaging myself. It was just, I was using muscles that hadn't previously or been used since school. So it was a case of getting used to running, getting into the kind of rhythm. I then realized quite early on that I was causing myself additional pain because of the shoes, because I had trained up until that point. I started in normal kind of just a pair of trainers that I had. I then obviously got my main shoes that I had for my training, kind of weightlifting kind of shoes, Metcon ones, and they were great in terms of giving me a stable platform, but rubbish for running because they were so stiff and they were so hard. And that was causing me, kind of extra pain. So I realized, okay, I'm going to have to get a pair of running shoes. And this kind of shows my mentality. Obviously, I got my custom Metcon shoes because I was, this is something that I'm interested in. The running bit, I just kind of did a little bit of research. I decided to stick with Nike because I knew the fit would work. Looked them up, found a black and white pair online. They were on offer somewhere, I can't remember even where they were, and I picked them up. It was kind of like, I just need to get something. Obviously they were designed for running and everything else, so, but it was still at that point very much kind of like, oh yeah, I'll just get anything because it's not that important. My mind still wasn't in that vein, as it were. And then it has just been, to put it, it sounds really off-putting, it's been a slog, but I mean that in terms of it's been the tortoise way. It's been slow and steady. There was never a hallelujah moment in terms of, oh, I'm suddenly faster or I'm suddenly easier or whatever. It was just doing it regularly, getting past those initial kind of discomfort, I won't call it pain, in terms of pushing my muscles that weren't used to kind of doing that. And then as it was built into the programs and we were doing more of it and realized that I needed to more of it, we did the first sim. And I think if memory serves me, the very first sim that I did, which I think was like about 129, with my original partner that I was going to be doing it with on the Sunday. And I think at that stage it was the first time I'd ever run that distance, 8 kilometers, ever. I think I maybe did some cross country at school, but I don't think it was particularly long. But yeah, so and that was the first one. And again, that was probably myself and the person I did it with. We were both relatively slow at that point, so it was probably it was comfortable-ish. You know, it would have been kind of hard, but again, the other movements we were fine with. And then it's just been a progression. It's just been doing more of it. I, looked into running a little bit more, and now I own 4 pairs of running shoes, 2 trail ones and 2 ordinary running shoes. Almost wore my first pair out, but it was just doing it over and over again. It was just that repetition, and again, it was looking into the kind of the science of it and the mechanics, getting used to running at that distance, and also getting, understanding, and I mentioned this in the row because it's the same kind of principle. It was going slower to going faster, doing those zone 2 long runs. And I can remember doing long runs beginning of this year, beginning of 2024, where, 3-4K was a long run. And I was doing that at 9.5 maybe. And that was a struggle. Whereas now, and as I did just a week or 2 ago, I did 10K at 12.5 and a sprint finish. Okay, I got my fastest 10K, fastest 5K in that same kind of session, but just being able and seeing my own progress, not in leaps and bounds, but just over that period that, struggling to run 5K at 9.5 to then being able to do 10K at 12.5. And obviously the latest sim that we did, doing the first 3 kilometers of the sim in 4:05, 4:12 and 4:12, I think the times were. So it's been that slow, steady progress. And that's what I think so much of this is about. It's my belief of the way that I've kind of trained over the last 18 months. And I think it's certainly the way that works for me, but it's building those habits and that slow, steady pace for long-term improvement and change. Now, when I did, and I haven't talked about this specifically, when I did my fastest 10K, I was actually last week, because I'm going to try and do my fastest 5K this week, is I knew that having done the sim the week before, we were at 4:42 pace, which is about 12.5 kilometers an hour. And I did that as part of the simulation. So that, okay, if I can do that as part of the simulation, and I found that I run quicker outside. I haven't done a lot of outdoor running, but I found it was quicker outside. So I went, okay, I think I can hold 12.5. And that's what I set out to do. I just got on the treadmill. I knew I was going to run for an hour. That was the original plan, at 12.5. And it was like, if I do that, that's going to be cover my longest distance in an hour, holding that pace. So I set off and was running that. And again, that was from the confidence from the sim the week before, and the confidence from, the sessions I'd done building up to that. This had probably been the 7th or 8th time that I'd done this long run on a Wednesday at 5:30 in the gym on a Wednesday morning. That was it was Thursday morning actually. That was long run day. So it was just doing this over and over again. And whereas I'd been building up, just doing them steady, I thought, right, I'm going to push this one a little bit. So set it on 12.5 and just went for it. I got 5K in and I was excited because that meant it was my fastest 5K to hold that speed. And at that point, I decided not to run for the full hour. I was just going to run to the 10K to record my fastest kind of 10K, hopefully. That was the plan. And really at that stage, it was like, can I hold on to this 12.5? Because I've done it for 5. Can I do it all the way? And so I just kind of kept going, clocking down the kilometers, got the next 4 done. So there's a kilometer to go. And I wouldn't say it was easy, and I can see from the heart rate thing that my heart rate was slowly getting higher and higher, but I was able to maintain 12 and a half. Now, I always have this stupid thing, and I was even doing it in the sims, and hopefully I will manage it on the race as well, is I always like putting a bit of a sprint finish in, making sure I leave nothing on the table is what goes through my head. What's the point of getting across the finish line going, oh, I've got a bit more energy. So I try and kind of push. So I had a kilometre to go and was naively confident, but equally then I was looking at the 10K time now. So I had that kind of driving me. So I then put the speed up from 12 and a half to, what did I go to first of all? 13.2, I think it was. I wasn't quite brave enough to go all the way to 13 and a half. I then went beyond that though. And basically held that. But I thought, okay, I'll just put this up for 500 meters. And I think I might have gone to 13 and a half now, for 500 meters. So 500 meters to go. And at this point now, because I'd done the sim outside, and we were literally running from the gym and back in a little circuit, I kind of visually, it's like, okay, that's just like turning. So I kind of had the finish line in my head, because obviously on the treadmill, you're just watching the numbers go down. There's no indication other than how much you're sweating and how tired you are as to how close you are to the finish. But I was imagining and remembering the outside runs. So at 500 meters, I put it up to 14 and a half. And so this was very fast for me now. So I held that for the 400 meters, which is kind of right, I've got to go up again. So for the last 100 meters, I put it up to 15 and a half. And I managed to kind of finish, and it was tough. I was glad I was finished at that point, and recorded my fastest, obviously 10K. That's what's given me a naive bit of confidence that I can improve my 5K, because if I was able to get that sprint finish and that increase in speed for kilometre 9, I should be able to hopefully hold that longer for kilometres 3, 4 and 5 maybe, and get around the 20-minute 5K, which is my hopeful target for Thursday. And if I get sub 20, that would be amazing. But it was just that kind of, and just kind of pushed and got that finish in. But again, that wasn't because I'd been practicing fast. It was because I'd been practicing long and slow, just doing these hour monotonous headphones in, or I much prefer it if there's a few of us running and we can actually kind of chat. Now, we're invariably running beyond zone 2 in some of those later distances, but I like to know that I can actually hold a slightly broken conversation, but still hold a conversation with people. And that's kind of like, that feels a good level. So of course, I'd gone from the simulation, which spurred me on to feel that I could hold a higher speed, which is what I did for the 5 and 10K. And that was last week, to then into the next simulation where we were running outside again. Now, I still believe some reason, whether it's weather, whether it's road, whatever, but for some reason I settle into a faster pace running outside than I do on the treadmill. And I thought it would be the other way around. So went into the next simulation, and Chris, my partner, who we were doing this one with, he is a runner. He's obviously a PT as well, and does lots of training, but he just recently done a half marathon. I think he's got 1 or 2 more booked this year. So I thought, okay, he's gonna kind of push me. So we set off, and we're running. And whereas where I did my previous sim, my partner Nathan kind of sat about 10 foot, 12 foot behind me, and he just kind of settled in, and that's what he preferred to doing. So I was kind of out the front, kind of pace wise, and I thought, well, I'll just keep going. If I go too fast, he'll drop back, I'll drop back. And we got into a good rhythm, and he said it was a good, hard, but a good pace. So we set out, and me and Chris were running shoulder to shoulder. And I don't know whether it's a bit of that kind of like, oh, well, I'm keeping up with him and he's keeping up with me. But so we went out there, and I'm not looking at my watch in the first kind of 500 meters to the turn point. Or all the way back actually. I'm just running, because I always hate the first run. It's kind of finding that rhythm and getting into it. But about halfway back on the first run, I was like, oh my God, I'm dying. It was really hard. And I was going, God, all my fueling's been the same. I haven't had a hard, I slept well. Why am I struggling so much? And I couldn't I couldn't work out. And of course I was inside my own head here, and I'm staying out with Chris, and we're still, we're kind of running. This is all happening in the space of 500 meters. But you kind of get inside your head and it's like, why am I finding this so hard? Why is this difficult? Oh no, is this going to be the first? Am I not going to be able to finish the simulation? Have I, and so all this was going through my head. Kept going. I could tell my breathing was heavier than I'm used to when I'm running. So we turned the corner so we could see the gym, pulled up to the front door of the gym, turned my watch, hit the button to stop the lap. 4:04. Now the previous week, 4:38 outside running was the fastest we'd gone, and then we settled into 4:42. So this was 34 seconds or 40 seconds or quicker than any of the runs the previous week. And I went, God, that's why it was so hard. So at that point I felt, okay, I've held a fast run and that's why it's hard. And Chris kind of said, God, we went a bit faster. And I said, yeah, we should probably slow it down a bit. So we went in, we did the ski, we came back out again and we ran. And I was right, okay, we've got to run a bit slower. So we went out there. At this point, we noticed that every time we were running on the way back, we were running into a headwind. So we ran back and I go, no, this is still feeling hard. Okay, well, it's just left over from the last one because we're running slower now. Got back, hit the thing, 4:12. And I went, we only went 8 seconds slower. Yeah, we need to slow it down. So we went in, we did the sled push, came back out, ran 4:12. And it literally, it took us, we were then like 4:20 something, then 4:30 something. So it took us kind of 5 runs to get down to a pace that we thought we were going to be running at in the first place. So it was really good to know that we had that speed in there. But it was a bit of a shock, and it's why I think the video I put out straight on the day we did the sim was, you hear a lot about people talking about going out too hot in the runs, and that's what we nearly did, because you're pushing that heart rate, so your recovery isn't as good straight into the next station. And whenever I do a sim, or whenever I do a big run or a big workout, and I look back at the heart rate, it's exactly what you expect. You have those peaks, and then it drops back down, and those recovery, and then it goes back up. And of course, what happens over the course of it, each time it peaks, the peak goes a little bit higher, and the recovery goes higher too, as in you don't recover quite as well, and that goes on. Now, my recovery was actually surprisingly good, looking at the heart rate data when we did this kind of sim, but it just felt hard. Now, we kept them all going, and I think, in fact, the last one we did was 4:32 again. So and it gave us a great time. I mean, we did it in 1:05. If we could replicate that on the day, we'd both be exceptionally happy. But it just kind of goes to show how much you can compromise the race, but also it gave me that confidence going, okay, I know there's a 4-minute run in there because I've just done one, not at the beginning, okay, it's when I'm fresh, but actually the following 2 and the last one, if you take those 5 combined, the average between those was about 4:10, something like that. So it's like, okay, I've got a 4-minute pace in there maybe. Now this is just, even despite all the things that I've achieved and the weight loss and all the rest of it, even if you went back 6 months and told me that I'd potentially be doing a 4-minute kilometer and a 20-minute 5K, I would have, just kind of nonsense. I don't like this running stuff. It took me a long while to kind of go, okay, maybe I'm a runner, and it's taken me a long while. But that was another battle. And again, I was listening to, one of the things I would do when I would do the running, would listen to audiobooks. And there was one in there in particular, and I should remember which one it was, but I can't right now. If I remember, I'll put something out there. But it was talking about the way our mind works, and we collect evidence for who we are and how we define ourselves. And there was me, and I was in my own head kind of going, oh God, it's a running day today. I'm not a runner. And of course, I was basically putting myself into this kind of real negative kind of head spin, as it were, because I kept telling myself that I wasn't a runner and that it was difficult and hard. So guess what? The run was difficult and hard, and I didn't look forward to, and it was just that kind of thing. But if you're running multiple times a week, and getting a little bit better every week, you're a runner. And once I kind of accepted that and got used to it, and I'm not saying it was a magical thing that suddenly made the runs easier, but there was a kind of thing, I think it helped me then, move forward and get into the runs more and not enjoy them. A friend of mine I've known for years who runs marathons and stuff like that, and I didn't quite grasp this, and I think I have mentioned it before when he first said it to me. Now I do. When people ask him what's the best bit about running, he says finishing. And he says, I know because of the achievement and all the rest of it. He said, but when you're running, it's just hard. And again, I kind of laughed and agreed and related it to some of the stuff I do, but only having kind of done it, there were multiple points in that 10K the other week and during the runs on the Hyrox sims where it's kind of like I'm not enjoying this. I mean, obviously the last 3 runs on the last sim, it was absolute monsoon weather and I didn't enjoy that. I said to Chris, my partner, I picked an indoor sport for a reason. This was the reason. So, but yeah, there's multiple bits that are hard, but it is that achievement at the end. It is that, I did that. I was able to hold that pace or whatever. And that's what's kind of made the difference. That combined accepting that as a runner, but just being slow and steady, just doing the training and putting the miles in, the kilometers in, doing the long, slow, boring runs. Today's was a prime example of that. I've been doing more incline running over the last few weeks on one of the days, but it's been incline sprints. And I've done that last few weeks. I went, I'm not going to push that much today. But I put it on incline 11 and I put it on 6 kilometers an hour, which is basically I wouldn't even say a brisk walk, a slightly faster walk. And I did that for an hour, just to basically give the calves a good stretch, get the heart rate going, and kind of sat there at kind of zone 2, then jumped on the bike and did zone 2 at that. Now all that's just been conditioning my legs, just been getting them kind of working, used to doing, because it was 100 minutes of non-stop exercise. With Hyrox, doesn't matter how you split the stations up, whether you're singles, doubles, you're basically doing 60 to 70 minutes, hopefully, if we get a good time, of non-stop exercise. Yeah, there's some little rests in there, but you're not kind of sitting down and having a massage rest. You are, farmers, you're moving, burpees, you're moving. It's only really the ski and the row and the wall balls where you're kind of stood still. But then those gaps are so short. So yeah, it was just about, again, slow and steady, just kind of putting the pace in and just doing that. And that's been one of the hardest things, but the biggest improvement. They're boring, dull, long runs on a treadmill, but I can see how much they've got me faster and got me readier for this race, and got me to a point that I didn't think was possible. There was only a few months ago, I thought, God, if we could get 1:15, maybe 1:12, and then we got a 1:12, and it's like, oh, I wonder. So it's just been that slow progression, because, and I've got all the times, if I look back at some of the sled push times, sled pull times, ski, row, none of those have really kind of changed. More efficient at them and might be a bit faster, and obviously there's a little bit of time everywhere. But the massive thing that's changed is being able to go from, and I remember one of the first sims, one of the slower sim I did last weekend, we're doing 6-minute kilometers. Well, I did a 4:04. So that's where that time time difference comes in, is that I've got that much better at the runs, that it's given me the confidence going into this, but it's given me that speed by doing the hard stuff, doing the long stuff. Now, in terms of technique and things like that, I'm not going to delve into that, because I've just watched videos and read stuff to try and find out and make myself a better runner. But yeah, the key things is some of that running stance, looking forward, kind of upright, loose shoulders, moving the arms, getting the rhythm That's one of the big things. And the footwear. It makes a massive difference running in a good pair of running shoes as opposed to the completely wrong shoes where I started, but just an average pair. You're just an ordinary pair of trainers. They give you that support, they give you that bounce, and they allow you to get kind of into that rhythm, which is going to be very important. When it comes to Hyrox, you've got to have a shoe that, and I think I mentioned this earlier on, you've got to have a shoe that gives you that confidence in the runs, but also gives you the grip and the stability you need for lunges, for the sled pull and things like that, because you've got to do both in that. And you could have amazing running shoes that just don't work for that. And that was one of the pairs that I first tried. It's just, they're much better for heavier runners. And I just couldn't get enough grip and everything else. Great for the runs. They were super kind of, light, and get the feedback and the running and the bounce it gave me. But trying to do lunges and things like that on there, I was all over the place because I just couldn't get the stability. So it does make a difference getting those little bits right. Making sure if you need a wide toe box, if that's more comfortable. So it's getting those things kind of right. But yeah, the tortoise way, doing the slow stuff. And slowly pushing yourself, because again, I could have sat at even slower, but it was each time I saw my speed increase a little bit. Next time we did a long run, I went, okay, well, I'm just going to dial that up a little bit. So I'm still not going kind of flat out. I know I want to be at this speed, but I get to that speed by doing the long stuff. The long stuff slower. At 50, and again, one of the things I looked up at, between 55 and 80% of the speed you want to run at. That's what you want to do your long run stuff at, and doing that zone 2 and just steady stuff. So yeah, running is a huge part. I've rabbited on a little bit, but this is coming from someone who was not a runner. I will loosely maybe call myself a runner now. And on the Saturday in between the two Hyroxes, so we've got the Hyrox Friday morning, and then Sunday afternoon at 9 o'clock on the Saturday morning, I'm doing my first park run. So whether that officially makes me a runner once I've done a park run in between two Hyroxes, who knows? But yeah, it's been a long journey getting here. And one actually thing that I will throw in at the end, and this was something that I haven't experienced directly, but I certainly have indirectly, and I've seen some of the other people I train with. But this is one of those things, and I haven't mentioned this on any of the other stations specifically, but running is one of the areas where weight makes a difference. Now, again, some of the very best Hyroxes, 98, 100 kilos, whatever. So it's about where you are. But I think part of my view of myself as not being a runner is I hadn't run for years, haven't needed to. And of course, my brain was still accustomed to being 25 kilos heavier than I now am. And I know from some of the other people I'm training, there was one guy there in particular that over a short period of time, he dropped, I think it was 5 or 6 kilos while he was doing more running. And he said he could feel the difference, of doing that. And I did do some of my early runs with a 10K weight vest on, just to try and, kickstart getting everything kind of moving and work the muscles. But obviously where I am now, which is around 73.5, 74 kilos, which is pretty much where I've been all this year. I haven't really deviated around that weight. So all my running has been at that weight. So, but that does make a difference. If you can, it's one of those areas, if you are struggling, obviously you've got to keep the muscle, you've got to keep the strength and all the rest of it. But, if you think of it pure mechanically and logically, if you're running around with one shopping bag or with 2 shopping bags, it's going to be easier with one. So again, having less weight on, I think, is one of those things that's also helped me, because you're literally just carrying less weight around. So that's just a little extra point at the end there. Anyway, I hope that's been useful. Hope these videos have been useful. Going through the individual stations, not from someone that's been, as I've said before, looks like they were born and sculpted in a gym, by an average guy who's lost weight over the last couple of years, started this training, been on this training journey. As I'm recording this video today, there are 10 days until I do my first Hyrox. which makes it 12 days till I do my second Hyrox, and then there'll be a gap of about 5 weeks until my third Hyrox. And next week I'll be announcing something exceptionally exciting for 2025, and this is for any of you that have happened to have got this long into the video. I'm not going to give away everything, but that will be Hyroxes 1, 2 and 3, and not counting any of the simulations at this point. But next year, 2025, I'm putting together something for charity, which is going to be a little bit crazy, and if I can pull it off, we'll see me possibly doing 100 Hyroxes. So not 100 days to Hyrox, but 100 days of Hyrox. So watch this space if you're interested to see what that's all about, and when I announce that hopefully next week, prior to my very first Hyrox, which is now only 10 days away. So until the next time, bye for now.